Hey there, green fingers. No, here, green fingers. Today I'm going to talk about this pen. This is a Mabie Todd Blackbird. It is a vintage pen. This came to me through Colin. Colin had an issue with it. I checked it out. I hope I've resolved it, and we'll see about that. But as I had it here, I thought I may as well review it. Maybe that's interesting to some people out there. I'm not a huge expert on Mabie Todd, but what I do know, it's a vintage pen. And Mabie Todd was a brand that is fairly well known for its flex nibs. It's very nice, flexible nibs. And I think the range was Swan, Blackbird, and then there was another bird, which I have. I have that pen, Swallow. Yeah. So you have the Swallow too. And I'm not sure whether the Swallow was a higher end pen than the Blackbird. But in any case, as you can see, it is black, and it is the Blackbird, and even this one has a super nice nib. So if you're really looking for a super flexy vintage pen, check out the Mabie Todd pens. It's maybe not going to be cheap, but you will be getting something that's very interesting. You'll see that in the writing sample. Okay, let's cover the parts of the pen, tell what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and then we'll do a writing sample, which is probably the most interesting thing, considering the nice flexiness of this pen. Sorry. On top of the cap, there is nothing. Then there is the word Blackbird right on top of the cap there. You see this nice texture and a little breather hole, a vent hole to make sure the cap doesn't actually draw a vacuum. And you have the cap, you have the barrel has that same texture. And then on the barrel there is some writing. It says Blackbird, self-filling pen, Mabie Todd & Co. Limited, made in England. And then it has something that's a little bit difficult to show in the light, but it's well, a bird with the word trademark under it. So I'm assuming it's a Blackbird, but it's not that detailed, so we're just gonna pass over that. It's a lever filler. You got the lever right there, meaning you put the pen in a bottle of ink and operate this. There's a rubber sac inside. It is compressed, and when it's decompressed, it draws up ink. Very nice, simple system. The nib is definitely nice. It's one of those nice vintage 14K nibs. Often offer a lot of flexibility, as this one does. It says Blackbird 14C, made in England, and I think that's it. There's something below that, but I can't see what that says. Alright. The section, small, then it flares up a bit. Usually these vintage pens are not as large as modern pens, but they can be very interesting to use. The cap screws in place, there's no clip, and that's all there's to it. That's the pen. Things I like about it, things I don't like about it. Well, yeah, it's known that I like the somewhat bigger pen, so for me this could be a bit bigger, have a bit more girth, but in general it's definitely large enough to use. I'm going to be very careful when I post this. I don't want to damage any vintage pens, but just to show you the size. It's pretty big, so posting really should not be necessary. You should be able to use it unposted. So it's not that small. If you have a Parker a Waterman 52, after 52 and a half, I believe, which is a lot smaller. So this is actually a pretty normal sized pen. Things I do actually like about it, well, that nib is super cool, really flexy, lays down a beautiful wet line. Maybe a bit prone to railroading. Some of these vintage pens have super good feeds that will just, no matter what you do, they just keep flowing ink. With this pen I had a little bit more trouble, but in general, I mean, it's a super cool pen. So this is the type of pen that may not be a looker, but once you see what it can do, I think you're sold. So we're going to do a writing sample next, but before that let's just take a couple of measurements. It's a fairly light pen, so I'm not expecting a loss in the weight area. It's black hard rubber, so I've got about 15 grams. Capped, the pen is a good 130 millimeters, a little over 5 inches. Need to be careful here, I don't want to damage that nib. So uncapped we have 121 millimeters, it's approximately 5 inches. Section diameter, the narrowest point, is about 8 millimeters, and at the widest point where it meets the barrel, it's about 9.5, almost 10 millimeters. That's all there's to it. You know what? I want to see a writing sample. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye. Okay, writing with the Mabie Todd Blackbird. The ink is Gandash. Blue sky. You're stepping it gently there to get a bit of an inflow going in the feed. I've just inked it up. Okay, a bit of writing, normal writing. Looks good to me. Bit of fast writing. You see a couple of skips. This is an interesting pen because it was made to have a nice flexy nib, and then sometimes under no pressure it's not that great. So for example, if I were to use this without any pressure, then you can see that there's quite a lot of skipping going on. If I do that with a bit of pressure, you see it's much better. So that's just what these pens are like, probably. And don't forget, they are antique pens. Those nibs have been used for years and years, so sometimes they lose a bit of tipping or whatever. That's just the way it is. Okay, what about wetness? Well, given a bit of pressure, I think it's a fairly wet pen. Now where this pen really comes into play is flex. So with no pressure whatsoever, you get a pretty thin line, and you add pressure, you add pressure, you add pressure, you add pressure. At some point it's going to railroad. But before we get there, as you can see, that's not exactly shabby, right? Need to get inflow going a bit. There we go. Okay. So what is this? Those grids are 5 millimeters. This is almost half of one of those grids. So this is a serious line. And as you can see, when you're actually writing, I'm really pushing it hard now. A little less. You get some huge line variation, which is a lot of fun to fool around with. Okay. Final thing, writing reverse style. Quite scratchy, and obviously no flex. So I'm not sure whether I would do this a lot with a vintage pen, but as people are interested, I always like to show it. You know what? That's all there's to it. So, Mabie Todd Blackbird. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.